As you know, Hebrew has two genders, masculine and feminine. In Williams' sections 17 to 27, he covers various features of Hebrew gender. I want to introduce you to three categories that I think are important to help you think about gender in Hebrew. And I've colored them three different colors below. There is gender of form, gender in agreement, and gender in meaning. The technical terms would be morphological gender, syntactical gender, and semantic gender. What we mean by morphological gender, or gender of form, is that some words have distinctive endings. The masculine singular has no distinctive endings, but the masculine plural endings are distinctive. Feminine singular endings are generally distinctive, most commonly kametz he or patak tav, though there are other feminine ending forms. And the feminine plural ending ot is very common. Distinct from morphological gender is syntactical gender. Syntactical gender is whether a word agrees in gender with words that modify it. So, does a noun agree with an adjective in gender? Does it agree with a demonstrative pronoun? And sometimes nouns disagree in gender. In fact, there are some nouns that are feminine in form, but are always modified by masculine pronouns, or take masculine verbs, and then that indicates that its syntactical gender is different than its morphological gender. In general, you should expect agreement between morphological gender and the gender of words that modify it, though there are exceptions. This is relevant to exegesis and translation because we start out expecting nouns to agree in gender and number, though they may disagree. And if they disagree, and there's not a pattern of disagreement, then that would suggest authorial choice and be indicative of some kind of communicative intent. The author was trying to say something by the disagreement. If, on the other hand, there's just a pattern of disagreement between form and syntax, then there's no exegetical significance. An example of this kind of disagreement can be found with the word Laila, meaning evening or night, and the demonstrative pronoun that modifies it. Laila, which ends in kametz he, is consistently modified by a masculine demonstrative pronoun, hu, or ze, the form of this. There is also semantic gender, or gender of meaning, and by semantic gender I mean that the item to which a word refers may be actually masculine or feminine biologically, or the word may just be morphologically masculine or feminine, but the object to which it refers does not have natural gender, and so we would consider it neuter in English. A lot of exegetical and theological fallacies have been committed around the relationship between morphological gender and semantic gender. People have said to the Hebrew, everything in the world is either masculine or feminine. Or because this noun form is feminine, Hebrews must have conceived of this idea as somehow inherently feminine, or if it's masculine, inherently masculine. This has been repeatedly demonstrated to be false. For example, as Watkin notes, most Indo-European languages and Semitic languages use gender, but Turkish, Chinese, and Basque do not. Turkish nowhere, not even in its pronouns, grammatically distinguishes genders. Noting this contrast, James Barr points out that it would be nonsensical to suppose that the Turks were unaware of sexual differences, or that grammar proves as he says, the legendary erotic interests of the French. It is not true that speakers of a language with a two-gender system think of all objects as male or female. Rather, as F.R. Palmer argues, it is simply that the grammar of their language divides all nouns into two classes which correspond to those genders. There's no reason to think that that's the case. So if you run across that in commentaries or theological word books or discussions about Hebrew, somehow making something out of the fact that the form is masculine or feminine, therefore the idea or the conception of that idea is necessarily masculine or feminine, and then going on to say something about the way Hebrews thought, it's bogus. You should discard it. Nonetheless, semantic gender is relevant to exegesis and translation, because if in a given situation you have a male and a female, the way to indicate who is being referred to will be to make use of morphological gender in general. That is, we expect feminine forms to be used when referring to a feminine person or animal, and the same with masculine. There's exceptions to most of this, but these are the general rules. So let's take a quick review of what Williams says in his categories under gender. With regard to masculine, he notes that it can refer to natural gender, that would be semantic gender. There are masculine grammatical gender, which would basically be the same thing as morphological gender. There are masculine plural nouns that refer to abstract ideas. That's just a recognition that some words have as their referent an abstract idea. It's not a use of the masculine gender. With regard to feminine, for the most part, these categories are listing the kinds of words that we observe that have morphologically feminine gender, whether it's body parts or countries and cities, or abstract ideas, neuter concepts, collectives, and singulatives. Now, perhaps the singulative deserves the most comment, because occasionally a singular masculine noun will have a corresponding feminine form with a distinctive meaning. In this case, for example, the word oni is a collective that refers to a fleet of ships, whereas oniya is a singulative referring to a single ship. Unfortunately, it doesn't always run masculine collective, feminine singular. Sometimes it goes the opposite way, so you just have to know on a case-by-case basis.